Live. No music today on account of this being a reading stream. Let's see, there's the setting up now. There's me in the lower left. Thanks to some folks who tipped during our 1 hour bonus stream today. We are actually only 13 away from our next face camera expansion milestone. But before we can do that, we gotta figure out... So this is chapter 128, so we need to get the what we're reading link updated for the Pequod meets the Rachel. So we're going to go ahead and post that link here and pin it in Twitch, and then we're going to switch over to YouTube as well. Welcome, Champagne Jane, in the Twitch chat. Let's get the YouTube and the Discord chat set up as well. Do-do-do. Do-do-do-do. Hey, Centaurtron. I really liked your egg idea. But, like, yeah. It's one of those things... I liked it so much, I'm, like, trying to figure out how to spin up a second server to accommodate requests like that. It's very cool. But, yeah. Hopefully Superstone filled you in on that. Let's see. We got this set up here. Welcome, Verum Gamer Live, Radio Tower, Sand Hippies, Champagne Jane, Magenta Avocado, Audit They, Stu, my guy. Okay, we've got all three chats open now. Okay. So we need to make sure that this gets added to the Moby Dick weekly playlist as well when it's done. And that this is set to game Minecraft. There's all the pre-stream stuff that I normally do with the music. I have to do by hand without the music while saying out loud what I'm doing, because I'm incapable of doing anything without speaking aloud about my process. It's very frustrating for everyone around me constantly. Being in the car with me is like being on a submarine where one guy is shouting, stop sign ahead aye, stop sign ahead 50 meters. 50 meters aye. Stop sign ahead 20 meters. 20 meters aye. Decelerating. Decelerating aye. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Magenta Avocado says, I'm having a great time this round of Everstorm. Hey, I'm glad to hear that. Everstorm is, of course, one of our Patreon Minecraft servers. It's a monthly reset server where every month I put on different mods and have some different rules. You get one life. It's a lot of fun. If that seems like the sort of thing you'd like to join, I've got my Patreon link here. Just so you know, I do manually send out those invites once per day. So on the plus side, you never have to worry about a million bots joining the Discord and ruining it for you. The downside is the first time you sign up, you might have to wait 24 to 36 hours, depending on how the tempo of my sign-up sending goes out. But yeah, Wandering Mass says, enjoyed your new episode, by the way. Thank you. Good evening, Basil Hunter. Welcome, Maddie Hilleman. Glad you could be here. Welcome, Raystar. Welcome, Rona. Welcome, Iconic Anemone. Okay, so here is where we are at. Bell Labs Research and Development Campus, reconstructed on HermitCraft. There's a few things that I had thought we might try to do during this stream. One of them was to work on inventory management, but opening and closing a lot of chests while reading is actually super challenging. So that's not the best first choice. However, somebody commented on my recent video that I had screwed up the electromagnetic spectrum. So we actually have to remove a whole bunch of blocks and replace them. And I was like, I don't want to do that right now. That's going to slow us down. But then I was like, well, wait, this is actually exactly the sort of thing that is good to do during, what do you call it? During a reading stream anyway. So maybe we will be doing that. I'm still figuring that bit out. Okay, so, but yeah. So before we're going to give everybody a chance to roll in so they're ready for the stream. And I am thinking, as I'm talking through this, that, yeah, we are probably going to spend this stream while we read replacing, like, basically swapping out the ultraviolet and the infrared because I had them on the wrong sides for the directionality that I was going for. I mean, I could just swap the directionality of the whole exhibit, but that feels weird, right? We could, especially because then the rainbow in the visual light exhibit is going to be backwards too, where it'd be vibgyor, right? So this was supposed to be radio, microwave, infrared visual light, ultraviolet, X-ray, gamma ray. But I've got ultraviolet and infrared swapped here. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to record a little segment about that. And then we will do the actual block removal and replacement. And then while we read Moby Dick. So that is the plan. You can find the What We're Reading link there. Oh, have I posted the tipping link yet? Other things I need to do before we can actually take down the Setting Up Now sign. Yeah, just as a reminder, we are only $13 away from our second face camera expansion milestone of the day. We got some tips that rolled in during our bonus morning stream. So thanks to everybody who stopped by for that. Well, because I was like, oh my gosh, I've got so much inventory management to do, which obviously it's my passion, but like, so I can't just not do it. I just need to go and manage this inventory immediately. No breaks, all gas. Is that what the kids say? I feel like all gas, no breaks is a thing the kids say. Actually, that might be something that like 80-year-old men who play pinball say. When somebody is never trapping up the ball. Now that yeah, all gas, no breaks, I think is an old people commentating on pinball term. But whatever. It's fine. We're not here to be hip and young. We're just doing it incidentally. While the rest of this is happening as well. Okay, so let's get some blocks placed. Zglib says, very similar dialects, the pinball men and the teens. You know, that's because what's old is new again. You know, all of this stuff is cyclical, all these trends, you know, they trend down, then they trend back up. You know, it's here and there, it's every freaking where. Welcome, Beanie Boy 97. Glad you could join us. Okay, we're gonna come back to that Doom box. And I'm gonna go drop some dirt in here. Okay. So I think we are ready to switch to recording mode. My voice is warmed up enough. Something weird happened with my my scenes in OBS. So I'm not sure how this happened. Yeah, that's even better. Great. Okay. So there we go. Start recording. HermitCraft Season 10, Episode 56, Segment Bravo, Take 1, and action. So I think we want to... The beacon. Let's fly up here. I am about 4 hours into my beacon storage removal project, and I have cleared out maybe 7 or 8 beacons of chests. Not all of them, though. That one, I might have gotten some of them, but not all of them. There's a bunch around the corner. But on the plus side, we are determining how much space we need inside of here for all those terraforming materials. You know, we've got our grass, we got our dirt. The stone all needs to go in the Popo lockup eventually. The gravel is actually helpful. I'm finding a lot of ender pearls. There's no ender pearl block, though, so I'm just putting that on the end stone. But we are making progress. once we figure out roughly how much space inside this room we need for all the storing of things, I figure we'll probably end up reallocating it and making it more like logical and cool looking, but this is a great starting point. What is not a great starting point is up here. You know, at the end of the last episode, I talked a little bit about how this side of the building was going to be the home to our electromagnetic spectrum exhibit. And we'd go radio waves, microwaves, ultraviolet, visible light, infrared, X-ray, gamma ray. Well, here's the thing. Sometimes you gotta sleep on it and come back to an idea because you miss stuff, right? Let's just run through that again. When you think about the visible light there, traditionally, you would represent that with red, orange, violet, yellow, green, indigo, violet. See, even with a fresh sleep in my body, I'm swapping some of these around. If only we had a mnemonic to help us remember the order of the colors in the rainbow. Short version, all of these ultraviolet blocks should be infrared, and all the infrared blocks should be ultraviolet. So, let's get our pick out and swap all these blocks. I'm glad I caught this before I started, like, building exhibits on top of here. But, yeah. It's time to do a little bit of rework. Time skip. Okay. And so we're going to stop the recording there. So, yeah. Flop. Yeah, it's... Oh, my gosh. I can't believe I screwed that up. I sat here... And the thing is, I feel a little bit better that nobody else caught it during the stream. There were a lot of people watching, and nobody caught it. So, yeah, it's fine. But let's go ahead and pull up our Moby Dick, Chapter 128, The Pequod Meets the Rachel. I've already posted the tipping link. Just as a reminder, tips that roll in the middle of a sentence or a chapter might not necessarily get read until there's a logical stopping point for them. Ideally, I'll read them between chapters or before chapters. Thank you, Odd. Tip in 13 for the arts. That gets us evenly to our next face camera expansion milestone. Please direct your attention down here because I'm about to expand Joe. Okay, very nice. Thank you very much. That now puts us 20 away from the next face camera expansion milestone. Tips are welcome via paypal.me/JoeHills and YouTube Super Chat. Let's go. We have blocks to remove, and we have a chapter to read. NYDAC, which is New York District Attorney City _ says, this is the first time I've actually joined a stream relatively on time. Yeah, we're actually just about to take down the setting up now sign because we're about to start reading Chapter 128 of Moby Dick, or the Whale, by Herman Melville. The Pequod Meets the Rachel. Next day, a large ship, the Rachel, was descried, bearing directly down upon the Pequod, all her spars thickly clustering with men. At the time, the Pequod was making good speed through the water, but as the broad-winged windward stranger shot nigh to her, the boastful sails all fell together as blank bladders that are burst, and all life fled from her smitten hull. "Bad news she brings, bad news," muttered the old Manxman. But ere her commander, who, with trumpet to mouth, stood up in his boat, ere he could hopefully hail, Ahab's voice was heard. "Hast seen the white whale?" "Aye, yesterday. Have you seen a whaleboat adrift?" Throttling his joy, Ahab negatively answered to this unexpected question, and would have fain boarded the stranger, when the strange captain himself, having stopped his vessel's way, was seen descending her side. A few keen pulls, and his boat-hook soon clinched the Pequod's main chains, and he sprang to the deck. Immediately, he was recognized by Ahab for a Nantucketer he knew, but no formal salutation was exchanged. "Where was he? Not killed? Not killed?" cried Ahab, closely advancing. "How was it?" It seemed that somewhat late on the afternoon of the day previous, while 3 of the strangers' boats were engaged with a shoal of whales, which had left them some 4 or 5 miles from the ship, and while they were yet in swift chase. To windward, the white hump and head of Moby Dick had suddenly loomed up out of the water, not very far to leeward. Whereupon the 4th rigged boat, a reserved one, had been instantly lowered in chase. After a keen sail before the wind, this 4th boat, the swiftest keeled of all, at least as well as the man at the masthead could tell anything about it, seemed to have succeeded in fastening. In the distance, he saw the diminished dotted boat, and then a swift gleam of bubbling white water, and after that, nothing more. Whence it was concluded that the stricken whale must have indefinitely run away with his pursuers, as often happens. There was some apprehension, but no positive alarm as yet. The recall signals were placed in the rigging. Darkness came on, and forced to pick up her 3 far to windward boats ere going in quest of the 4th one. In the precisely opposite direction, the ship had not only necessitated to leave that boat to its fate till near midnight, but for the time to increase her distance from it. But the rest of her crew being at last safe aboard, she crowded all sail, stun sail on stun sail, after the missing boat, kindling a fire in her trypots for a beacon, and every other man aloft on the lookout. But though when she had thus sailed a sufficient distance to gain the presumed place of the absent ones when last seen, though she then paused to lower her spare boats and pull all around her, and not finding anything, had again dashed on, once again paused, and lowered her boats, and though she had continued doing till daylight, yet not the least glimpse of the missing keel had been seen. The story told, the stranger captain immediately went on to reveal his object in boarding the Pequod. He desired the ship to unite with his own in the search, by sailing over the sea some 4 or 5 miles apart on parallel lines, and so sweeping a double horizon, as it were. "I will wager something here," whispered Stubb to Flask, "that someone in the missing boat wore off that captain's best coat. Mayhap his watch, he's so cursed anxious to get it back. Who ever heard of 2 pious whale ships cruising after one missing whale boat in the height of whaling season? See, Flask, only see how pale he looks, pale in the very buttons of his eyes. Look, it wasn't the coat, it must have been the...
My boy, my own boy, is among them. For God's sake, I beg, I conjure."
Here, exclaimed the stranger captain to Ahab, who thus far had but icily received his petition.
For 48 hours. Let me charter your ship. I will gladly pay for it, and roundly pay for it, if there be no other way. For 48 hours only, only that. Oh, you must, oh, you shall do this thing.
His son! Cried Stubb. Oh, it's his son he's lost. I take back the coat and watch. Oh, what says Ahab? We must save this boy. He's drowned with the rest of 'em last night, said the old Manx sailor, standing behind them. I heard all ye heard their spirits. Now, as it shortly turned out, what made this incident of the Rachels the more melancholy was the circumstance that not only was one of the captain's sons among the number of the missing boat's crew, but among the number of the other boat's crews at the same time. But, on the other hand, separated from the ship, among the dark vicissitudes of the chase, there had been another son still, as that, for a time, the wretched father was plunged to the bottom of the cruelest perplexity, which was only solved for him by his chief mate's instinctively adopting the ordinary procedure of a whale ship in such emergencies. That is, when placed between jeopardized but divided boats, always to pick up the majority first. But the captain, for some unknown constitutional reason, had refrained from mentioning all this, and not till forced to it by Ahab's iciness did he allude to his yet one missing boy, a little lad, but 12 years old, whose father, with the earnest but unmisgiving hardihood of a Nantucker's paternal love, had thus early sought to initiate him in the perils and wonders of a vocation almost immemorially the destiny of all of his race. Nor does it infrequently occur that Nantucket captains will send a son of such a tender age away from them for a protracted 3 or 4 years' voyage in some other ship than their own, so that their first knowledge of a whaleman's career will be unenervated by any chance displays of a father's natural but untimely partiality or undue apprehensiveness and concern. Meantime, now the stranger was still beseeching his poor boon of Ahab, and Ahab still stood like an anvil, receiving every shock, but without the least quivering of his own.
I will not go, said the stranger, till you say aye to me. Do to me as you would have me to do to you in the like case, for you too have a boy, Captain Ahab. Though but a child, and nestling safely at home now, a child of your old age, too. Yes, you relent, I see it. Run, men, now, and stand by to square the yards.
Avast, cried Ahab. Touch not a rope yarn. Then, in a voice that prolongingly molded every word, Captain Gardiner, I will not do it. Even now, I lose time. Goodbye. Goodbye. God bless ye, man, and may I forgive myself, but I must go. Mr. Starbuck, look at the binnacle watch, and in 3 minutes from this present instant, warn off all strangers, then brace forward again, and let the ship sail as before. Hurriedly turning, with averted face, he descended into his cabin, leaving the strange captain transfixed at this unconditional and utter rejection of his so earnest suit. But, starting from his enchantment, Gardiner silently hurried to the side, more fell than stepped into his boat, and returned to the ship. Soon the two ships diverged their wakes, and, long as the strange vessel was in view, she was seen to yaw hither and thither at every dark spot, however small, on the sea. This way and that way her yards were swung round. Starboard and larboard she continued to tack. Now she beat against a head sea, and again it pushed her before it, while all the while her masts and yards were thickly clustered with men, all three as tall as cherry trees, when the boys are cherrying among the bows. But by her still halting course and winding woeful way, you plainly saw that the ship was so wept with spray, still remained without comfort. She was Rachel, weeping for her children, because they were not. And that concludes chapter 128 of Moby Dick, or The Whale by Herman Melville. The Pequod meets the Rachel. I am definitely having a harder time reading doing precision work than I would removing a mountain, so sorry for the halting nature. Hope that this is still reasonable, and I appreciate your patience. Have a good night, Pug. Lay your head down and dream. Centortron says it's a couple weeks out from the first anniversary of us starting to read Moby Dick. Yeah, that's we're making a pretty good pace. We're making good time. Bum, 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 bum. Okay, place in all the blocks. What I don't understand about Ahab's rejection here is it strikes me that if that whale, if that particular boat it was that they can't find is the one that harpooned Moby Dick and was getting towed by Moby Dick, why wouldn't Ahab say, I'll help you find the boat, but the whale is mine? If they're still fastened. Like, I don't understand how he thinks that this will slow him down. I feel like this is such an obvious slam dunk to have two boats watching a double horizon for Moby Dick. But maybe I missed something because I was distracted by the floor removal. Lorewolf says it's impressive you can read aloud and play Minecraft at the same time. Oh, thank you. I do what I can. But yeah, it just seemed a little bit odd to me that this... So maybe I misunderstood. Maybe one of the other boats had fastened Moby Dick. And they were in the other direction, which is why Ahab... It sounds like Ahab... So it says the boats diverged their courses, but... But, like, there's a lot of reasons that this was, like, really not a great move on Ahab's part. For one thing, like, this guy is from his hometown. This guy recognizes and knows him. And knows, in theory, the owners of the boat. So even if Ahab had to go later on and say, yeah, I let somebody charter the boat for 2 days, for 48 hours. Instead of, yeah, it's peak whaling season, but, you know, I let this guy charter the boat for 48 hours. It's not like this is some guy that, some complete stranger. This is somebody who might, you know, a lot of the whalemen, it's mentioned, like, you know, go to the same churches and stuff. Like, their families know each other. Like, this kid is probably friends with the grandchildren of the owners of the boats who were the former captains, right? Like, this is a hometown problem happening off the Sea of Japan, or you know, like, or, and so it's just kind of, so it's one of those things where like it, he's gonna get back, and word might have already reached, like, even if they find the kid without the Pequod, right, and they get the other whale ship back, right, like, I could see them being like, dude, he was gonna pay you enough that losing the 2 days, it would have been 2 days of guaranteed profitability. And, you know, like, but like, if they don't bring the kid back, if they don't find the other whale boat, what is that? 11 widows possibly from Nantucket that are gonna be unhappy about this. Like, this is terrible. Like, I know Stubb was saying like, oh, you would never divert a second ship during whaling season to look for one boat, but like, there's a humanitarian element here of like these are, you know, guys that you know, possibly, like, I don't know, oh, it seems like they fastened another whale and Moby Dick got away. Okay, gotcha. Yeah, the guy the guy knows Ahab's kid. Like, so it's just kind of wild that like, it seemed to me like if he had said, you know, fine, but if you guys see the white whale, you got to tell us. We'll let you know if we see this this boat, and you let us know if you see the white whale. We'll both do a double horizon sweep. You know? But I don't know. I guess Ahab's just too monomaniacal or something. Okay. So the next chapter is chapter 129, The Cabin. We need to update the what we're reading link so that that can go in the pins. Like, you know, if the guy hadn't offered to charter the boat, and he wasn't somebody they knew, even, okay, like, you know, if some random, like, because they've had like other ships screw with them, or, you know, it's one of those things like, yeah, if it was somebody they didn't know who might be messing with them, like, oh yeah, I'll pay you to charter your boat, but then they're just like, but like, this was a guy where they knew he was good for the money. They could, there was no way that this was a scam or a trick. There was no way that the guy couldn't afford it, because even if that guy in particular couldn't afford it, when they got back to Nantucket, they could go to the owners of that boat and get the money. Like, right, you know, like, it just seems like Ahab could have tried, because like, the other boat guys have demonstrated that they're capable of finding the white whale. His crew haven't seen the white whale once, but this other guy's crew have. So maybe say, okay, yeah, we'll let you charter us, but one of the terms is that if you guys see the white whale, we're dropping boats to go after it. What's the name of the book? If you click the pinned link, you'll find it is called Moby Dick or the Whale by Herman Melville. So we're just going to go ahead and remove a bunch of this. So the next chapter is called The Cabin, chapter 129. And this is another one of the weird ones that has, like, stage directions. So for those of you just joining who might have missed some of the previous chapters, one of the characters in this next chapter, Pip, had a traumatic incident at sea. He's like a 12-year-old kid who was working. He originally came on board as a steward, I think, but then because of like somebody else being injured, he was filling in for somebody on a whaleboat. Then he was left adrift after getting knocked out of the boat, and came back, and he's like seriously messed up by the situation. And so Ahab has felt pity on him and basically adopted the kid. So if you're like, why is Ahab talking to this kid who was the cabin steward or whatever, cabin boy, earlier in the book? I wasn't here 2 weeks ago when that happened. Yeah. So yeah. Pip had some really bad brain injury, and Ahab felt so bad for him that he adopted him. And so let's see. So chapter 129 of Moby Dick or the Whale by Herman Melville. The Cabin. Ahab moving to go on deck. Pip catches him by the hand to follow. Lad, lad, I tell thee thou must not follow Ahab now. The hour is coming when Ahab would not scare thee from him, yet would not have thee by him. There is that in thee, poor lad, which I feel too is curing to my malady, like cures like, and for this hunt my malady becomes my most desired health. Do thou abide below here, where they shall serve thee, as if thou wert the captain. Ay, lad, thou shalt sit here, in my own screwed chair. Another screw to it thou must be. No, 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 ye have a whole body, sir, but use poor me for your one lost leg only. Tread upon me, sir, I ask no more, so I remain a part of ye. Oh, spite of million villains, that this makes me a bigot in the fadeless fidelity of man. But, and crazy, but methinks like cures like applies to him too. He grows so sane again. They tell me, sir, that Stubb did once desert poor little Pip, whose drowned bones now show white for all the blackness of his living skin. But I will never desert ye, sir, as Stubb did to him. Sir, I must go with ye. If thou speakest thus to me much more, Ahab's purpose keels up in him. I tell thee no, it cannot be. O good master, 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 weep so, and I will murder thee. Have a care, for Ahab too is mad. Listen, and thou wilt hear my ivory foot upon the deck, and still know that I am there. And now I quit thee. Thy hand met. Thou, true art thou, lad, as the circumference to its center. So, God forever bless thee, and, if it come to that, God forever save thee. let what will befall. Ahab goes, and Pip steps one step forward. Here he this instant stood. I stand in his air, but I'm alone. Now were even poor Pip here, I could endure it, but he's missing. Pip, Pip, ding dong ding, who's seen Pip? He must be here, let's try the door. What? Neither lock nor bolt nor bar, and yet there's no opening it. It must be the spell. He told me to stay here, aye, he told me this screwed chair was mine. Here then, I'll seat me against the transom in the ship's middle, all her keel and 3 masts before me. Here old sailors say in their black 74s, great admirals sometimes sit at table and lord it over rows of captains and lieutenants. Ha! What's this? Epaulets, epaulets, the epaulets of all come crowding. Pass round the decanters. Good to see you, glad to see you. Fill up monsieurs. What an odd feeling now, when a black boys host to white men with gold lace upon their coats. Monsieurs, have you seen one, Pip? A little African lad, 5 feet high, hangdog looking cowardly. Jumped from a whaleboat once. Seen him? No? Well then, fill up again, captains, and let's drink shame on all cowards. I name no names. Shame upon them. Put 1 foot upon the table. Shame upon all cowards. Hist above there. I hear ivory. Oh, master, master, I am indeed downhearted when you walk over me. I'll stay, though. The stern strikes rocks. They bulge through, and oysters come to join me. And that concludes chapter 129 of Moby Dick or the Whale by Herman Melville, entitled The Captain. So yeah, as like Ahab even explicitly said at the beginning of that chapter, this was kind of hinted at in my little summary, but I don't think they said it explicitly in the book earlier. Like, the captain knows that he's going mad, and seeing Pip go mad felt he was like family to him. And, he's like, making the stewards and stuff wait on Pip the way they would wait on him. Centauratron says, so Pip doesn't remember he's Pip? Is that from him falling overboard? Yeah, he's one of his, part of his, psychological collapse after being left adrift on the sea for, 24 hours, was that he's, disassociated. He's fixated on the idea. He knows, he won't let go of the idea that Pip is missing. Because he knows he's not himself, if that makes sense. But yeah. And so, in some ways, when the author goes out of their way to have Ahab be like, wow, Pip's madness reminds me of my own, that sort of thing, it's probably I think the author is trying to imply here that Ahab realizes on some level he has completely lost who he was after his accident when Moby Dick took his leg. And Pip is verbalizing what Ahab is camouflaging. And so that's why he sees so much in this child who, in every other way, especially at the time, the idea of a white New Englander adopting a black child because they're so similar is not the sort of thing that would happen, right? This is intentionally supposed to be an odd occurrence. And so, you know, I think Melville is signposting here. He's giving us, like, I guess what I'm saying is I think a lot of the Pip monologues are written with the intent that this is also kind of Ahab's internal screaming. Pip's external rambling is Ahab's internal screaming. Like, Ahab feels like he's a failure. Maybe not a coward the way Pip is focused on, but, like, you know, Ahab feels like losing his leg to the whale was a defeat. On an identity-shattering level, right? So it's not just that Ahab's... So, like, you know, we've seen how, you know, Ahab was physically damaged by his encounter with the whale. And there's increasing hints about how damaged he was mentally by his encounter with the whale. But, yeah, I think the author is trying to say, like, there's a reason Ahab is looking at this kid and going, yeah, man, I get it. And it's because he actually does. This isn't just Ahab having some weird whim because he's lost his mind. This is him truly actually recognizing the same or similar symptoms, the same loss of self in another. I think it's actual understanding. That's my read on it anyway. What do y'all think? Anybody have any thoughts, questions, or concerns about what we've just read in the last chapter? Also, welcome, Yellow Cat. I think you rolled in right when I was starting the chapter, so sorry for not greeting you until now. Oops. So, yeah. Dun, dun, dun. Jason So says, Ahab doesn't have retrograde amnesia the way Pip does, but he lost himself the other way. That's the thing, though, is I guess what I'm saying, Ahab hasn't necessarily lost his memories, but he's lost his identity in the same way. Like, the same way that Pip is saying that Pip is dead, Ahab believes Ahab is dead. Ahab isn't worried about dying while chasing the white whale because he already died chasing the white whale. Simply Lost says, I think the relationship between the two is very symbolic. Hello, Joe. Hello, Simply Lost. So Ahab, you know, has a son back home, but now he also has an adopted son at sea. And Centauratron says, I wonder, were it Pip in a boat gone missing, would he demand the other ships go out to look for him? The same way the captain of the Rachel asked him to do. That's a great question. Ahab's affection for Pip and his adoption of Pip is not something that we've seen tested yet. And it would be interesting for the author to set up something comparable. I'm not I don't remember there being something like that, but the last time I read this was 10 years ago. So I think that's something we're going to have to read and see. Read and find out, I think, is the thing. But yeah. Okay. Oh, one thing that I want to mention that really jumped out at me this chapter from a historical perspective was that because Pip is now the captain's son, the captain's son gets to sit in the fancy chair that they call the screwed chair. And I'm not sure I don't know enough about furniture making, and especially shipboard furniture making from the 1850s. Is that a chair like an old stool with a screw in the central post that gets higher or lower as you spin it? Or is that just a wooden chair that instead of having pegs holding it together or nails, has screws holding it together? And screws were very expensive at the time to make compared to wooden dowels or other types of fittings. And so the idea that, like, oh man, you get to sit in a chair that has like metal screws, like, wow, that's that normally only the captain gets to do that, but that's cool. That's cool. That's a real treat. I'm not sure about that. But yeah, if anybody here knows more about boats than I do, or maritime stuff from that era. Magenta Avocado says, I picture it as a chair with an adjustable screw seat. Fair enough. Yeah. He did say, though, you need to stay in that chair as though you were an additional screw, which makes me think it might be fastened by screws. But I think that still works, even if it's the one screw that, like, just elevates it or drops it. Welcome, Evolution. Enjoy your day off. Welcome to the stream. We just got finished reading chapter 129 of Moby Dick or the Whale by Herman Melville. And I need to actually update the what we're reading link to point to the next chapter shortly. We are fixing some floors in our exhibit hall here. Simply Lost says the relationship shows both the mental and the physical sides of trauma. Yeah, there's definitely a lot. Like I said, I think there's a lot of things that, like, they definitely have Ahab monologue some. But as the captain of the ship, he can't just go around saying absolutely bonkers stuff nonstop. Whereas Pip can. And so, like I said, I think there's a lot of things that Pip can say, and then Ahab can be like, yeah, he gets it. But without, like, the author having to try to figure out how to have Ahab's voice say those things. Okay. So let's go ahead and we're going to take these blue ones over here now. Centauratron says, so Pip is externalizing Ahab's inner monologue. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. That's my read on it. I think the author is giving us a window into Ahab's inner monologue through Pip. Okay, so let's go ahead and update the what we're reading link, because we just finished up chapter 129, so we need to update that to 130, and we're going to post that link in the YouTube chat here and the Twitch chat. Pin link. Okay. Okay, what else have we got to do? We've posted that. I think we are ready. We've laid our heads down and dream. We need to grab more snacks. I was going to say, I feel like while I'm over here, we're missing something. We are missing food. Boy, we are going to have to go get more food soon. Okay. So, the next chapter, chapter 130, is entitled the hat. And now that at the proper time and place, after so long and wide a preliminary cruise, Ahab, all other waters swept, seemed to have chased his foe into an ocean fold, to slay him the more securely there, now that he found himself hard by the very latitude and longitude where his tormenting wound had been inflicted, now that a vessel had been spoken with on the very day preceding, which had actually encountered Moby Dick, and now that all his successive meetings with various ships contrastingly concurred to show the demoniac indifference with which the white whale tore his hunters, whether sinning or sinned against. Now it was that there lurked a something in the old man's eyes, which it was hardly sufferable for feeble souls to see. As the unsetting polar star, which through the livelong Arctic 6 months' night sustains its piercing, steady central gaze, so Ahab's purpose now fixedly gleamed down upon the constant midnight of the gloomy crew. It domineered above them so that all their bodings, doubts, misgivings, fears were fain to hide beneath their souls, and not sprout forth a single spear or leaf. In this foreshadowing interval, too, all humor, forced or natural, vanished. Stubb no more strove to raise a smile. Starbuck no more strove to check one. Alike, joy and sorrow, hope and fear seemed ground to finest dust and powdered, for the time, in the clamped mortar of Ahab's iron soul. Like machines, they dumbly moved about the deck, ever conscious that the old man's despot eye was on them. But did you deeply scan him in his more confidential hours, when he thought no glance but one was upon him? You would have then seen that even as Ahab's eyes so awed the crew's, the inscrutable Parsi's glance awed his, or somehow, at least in some wild way, at times affected it. Such an added, gliding strangeness began to invest the thin Fedallah now. Such ceaseless shudderings shook him that the men looked dubious at him, half uncertain, as it seemed, whether indeed he were a mortal substance, or else a tremendous shadow cast upon the deck by some unseen being's body. And that shadow was always hovering there, for not by night even had Fedallah ever certainly been known to slumber, or go below. He would stand still for hours, but never sat or leaned. His wan but wondrous eyes did plainly say, "We two watchmen never rest." Not at any time, by night or day, could the mariners now step upon the deck, unless Ahab was before them, either standing in his pivot hole, or exactly pacing the planks between two undeviating limits, the mainmast and the mizzen. Or else they saw him standing in the cabin scuttle, his living foot advanced upon the deck as if to step, his hat slouched heavily over his eyes, so that however motionless he stood, however The days and nights were added on. He had not swung in his hammock. Yet hidden beneath that slouching hat, they could never tell, unerringly whether, for all this, his eyes were really closed at times, or whether he was still intently scanning them. No matter. Though he stood so in the scuttle for a whole hour on the stretch, and the unheated night damp gathered in beads of dew upon that stone-carved coat and hat, the clothes that the night had wet, the next day's sunshine dried upon him. And so, day after day, and night after night, he went no more beneath the planks. Whatever he wanted from the cabin, that thing he sent for. He ate in the same open air, that is, his only 2 meals. Breakfast and dinner. Supper he never touched, nor reaped his beard, which darkly grew all gnarled as unearthed roots of trees blown over, which still grow idly on at naked base, though perished in the upper verdure. But though his whole life was now become one watch on deck, and though the Parsee's mythic watch was without intermission as his own, yet these two never seemed to speak, one man to the other, unless at long intervals some passing unmomentous matter made it necessary. Though such a potent spell seemed secretly to join the twain openly, and to the awestruck crew they seemed pole-like asunder. If by day they chanced to speak one word, by night dumb men were both, so far as concerned the slightest verbal interchange. At times, for the longest hours, without a single hail, they stood far parted in the starlight, Ahab in his scuttle, the Parsee by the mainmast, but still fixedly gazing upon each other, as if in the Parsee Ahab saw his forethrown shadow. And in Ahab, the Parsee, his abandoned substance. And yet, somehow, did Ahab, in his own proper self, as daily, hourly, and every instant, commandingly revealed to his subordinates, Ahab seemed an independent lord, the Parsee but his slave. Still again, both seemed yoked together, and an unseen tyrant driving them, the lean shade siding the solid rib. For be this Parsee what he may, all rib and keel was solid Ahab. At the first faintest glimmering of the dawn, his iron voice was heard from aft. "Man the mastheads!" And all through the day, till after sunset, and after twilight, the same voice every hour, and at the striking of the helmsman's bell, was heard. "What do you say? Sharp! Sharp!" But when 3 or 4 days had slided by, after meeting the children seeking Rachel, and no spout had yet been seen, the monomaniac old man seemed distrustful of his crew's fidelity, at least of nearly all, except the pagan harpooneers. He seemed to doubt even whether Stubb and Flask might not willingly overlook the sight he sought. But if these suspicions were really his, he sagaciously refrained from verbally expressing them, however his actions might seem to hint them. "I will have the first sight of the whale myself," he said. "Aye, Ahab must have the doubloon." And with his own hands he rigged a nest of basketed bowlines, and, sending a hand aloft, with a single sheaved block to secure to the main masthead, he received the two ends of the downward reeved rope, and, attaching one to his basket, prepared a pin for the other end, in order to fasten it at the rail. This done, and with that end yet in his hand and standing beside the pin, he looked round upon his crew, sweeping from one to the other, pausing his glance long upon Daggoo, Queequeg, Tashtego, but shunning Fadalla, and then, settling his firm, relying eye upon the chief mate, said, "Take the rope, sir. I give it into thy hands, Starbuck." Then, arranging his person in the basket, he gave the word for them to hoist him to his perch. Starbuck being the one who secured the rope at last, and afterward stood near it. And thus, with one hand clinging round the royal mast, Ahab gazed upon the sea for miles and miles. Ahead, astern, this side and that, within the wide expanded circle commanded at so great a height. When in working with his hands at some lofty, almost isolated place in the rigging, which chances to afford no foothold, the sailor at sea is hoisted up to that spot and sustained there by the rope. Under these circumstances, its fastened end on deck is always given in strict charge to some one man who has the special watch of it. Because in such a wildness of running rigging, whose various different relations aloft cannot always be infallibly discerned by what is seen of them on deck, and when the deck ends of these rope are, being every few minutes cast down from their fastenings, it would be but a natural fatality if, unprovided with a constant watchman, the hoisted sailor should, by some carelessness of the crew, be cast adrift and fall all swooping to the sea. So, Ahab's proceedings in this matter were not unusual. The only strange thing about them seemed to be that Starbuck, almost the one only man who had ever ventured to oppose him with anything in the slightest degree approaching to decision, one of those two, whose faithfulness on the lookout he seemed to doubt somewhat. It was strange that this was the very man he should select for his watchman, freely giving his whole life into such an otherwise distrusted person's hands. Now, the first time Ahab was perched aloft, ere he had been there 10 minutes, one of those red-billed savage seahawks which fly so often incommodiously close round the manned mastheads of whalemen in these latitudes, one of these birds came wheeling and screaming round his head in a maze of untrackably swift circlings. Then it darted 1,000 feet straight up in the air, then spiralized downward and went eddying again around his head. But with his gaze fixed upon the dim and distant horizon, Ahab seemed not to mark this bird, nor indeed would anyone else have marked it much, it being no uncommon occurrence. Only now, among the least heedful eye, seemed to see some sort of cunning meaning in almost every sight.
Your hat! Your hat, sir!
Suddenly cried the Sicilian seaman, who, being posted on the mizzen-mast head, stood directly behind Ahab, though somewhat lower than his level, and with a deep gulf of air dividing him. But already the sable wing was before the old man's eyes. The long hooked bill at his head With a scream, the Black Hawk darted away with its prize. An eagle flew thrice round Tarquin's head, removing his cap to replace it, and thereupon Tanaquil, his wife, declared that Tarquin would be king of Rome. But only by the replacing of the cap was that accounted good. Ahab's hat was never restored. The wild hawk flew on and on with it, far in advance of the prow, and at last disappeared. Well, from the point of that disappearance, a minute black spot was dimly discerned, falling from that vast height into the sea. And thus concludes chapter 130 of Moby Dick, or The Whale, by Herman Melville. The Hat. So yeah, bird omens, always the best. Hat omens, also good. So this is a bit of a twofer. Anybody have any thoughts, questions, or concerns? I was expecting Ishmael to point out, or Melville to point out, that the captain appointing somebody to watch his rope makes sense, and him appointing Starbuck makes sense if this is some sort of test of courage, or not courage, loyalty. But what doesn't make sense is that now both of the guys whose job it is to run the ship, like if Ahab is going to be playing lookout instead of captain, he really needs Starbuck to be taking on the captain's duties and stepping up. But the captain is playing watchman and or playing lookout, and Starbuck is playing watchman on the rope, on the line. And so basically Ahab may be without a hat, but the ship metaphorically here is without a head, which I think is interesting. Welcome, Hippophobia. Welcome, Ejo Studios. Glad you could join us. So yeah, that was chapter 130. Let's see, we are 75 minutes into this stream. The next chapter is not very long. So we're going to go ahead and definitely update the what we're reading link for chapter 131. Boop, 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 boop. Okay, so we're going to pin that message. Yeah. And replace the pinned message in YouTube. If you guys are enjoying this stream, just as a reminder, we are $20 away from our next face camera expansion milestone, and tips are welcome via paypal.me/JoeHills and YouTube Super Chat. Every little bit helps. It is deeply appreciated if you have a few bucks to spare to send them my way, so I can keep making cool stuff here on the HermitCraft server. Not just Moby Dick, but also all sorts of wild videos and recordings. All the things that you guys enjoy on YouTube in the episodes happens not because the episodes make money, but because of tips that arrive during these streams. Y'all are enabling me to be a active and regular member of HermitCraft at a level that back when I had my day job, I couldn't do. And I appreciate y'all making that possible. So thank you. Welcome, Creative Knots. We are just working on swapping out these two floors because I messed up the ultraviolet and infrared parts of the electromagnetic spectrum. This is the exhibit hall for a museum, and this was going to be the platform. So basically, going in order, we had radio waves, microwaves, and then I said ultraviolet, visible light, infrared, X-rays, gamma rays. But it's like, oh, it actually needs to be infrared, then visible light, then ultraviolet. So we're swapping out these two floors at the moment. That is our current project. Hey, we got a tip rolling in. Let's see who it's from. It's from Wandering Mask, tipping 3, who says, thank you for reading. You're most welcome, Wandering Mask. Thank you for supporting the show so frequently. It is deeply appreciated. Alrighty, cheers. Let's have a sip of my drink. while I'm between chapters here. Okay, so we have the sun setting over there. So let's go lay our heads down and dream in game before we start the next chapter. Sleep in beds at night or during thunderstorms. La, da, da. So this next chapter, chapter 131, is entitled The Pequod Meets the Delight. What a delightful name for a ship. So, we're going to get back to our work area here and begin reading. Seems like nobody else had any other questions or thoughts on chapter 130. So here we go. Chapter 131 of Moby Dick, or the Whale, by Herman Melville. The Pequod Meets the Delight. The intense Pequod sailed on. The rolling waves and days went by. The life buoy coffin still lightly swung, and another ship, most miserably misnamed the Delight, was descried. As she drew nigh, all eyes were fixed upon her broad beams, called shears, which in some whaling ships crossed the quarter-deck at the height of 8 or 9 feet, serving to carry the spare, unrigged, or disabled boats. Upon the stranger's shears were beheld the shattered white ribs and some few splintered planks of what had once been a whaleboat. But you now saw through this wreck as plainly as you would see through the peaked, half unhinged, and bleaching skeleton of a horse. Hast seen the white whale? Look! Replied the hollow-cheeked captain from his taffrail, and with his trumpet he pointed to the wreck. Hast killed him? The harpoon is not yet forged that'll ever do that, answered the other, sadly glancing upon a rounded hammock on her deck, whose gathered sides some noiseless sailors were busy in sewing together. Not forged, and snatching Perth's leveled iron from the crotch, Ahab held it out, exclaiming, Look ye, Nantucketer, here in this hand I hold his death. Tempered in blood and tempered by lightning are these barbs. And I swear to temper them triply in that hot place behind the fin, where the white whale most feels his accursed life. Then God keep thee, old man. Seest thou that? Pointing to the hammock. I bury but one of 5 stout men who were alive only yesterday, but were dead ere night. Only that one I bury. The rest were buried before they died. You sail upon their tomb? Then, turning to his crew, Are ye ready there? Place the plank then on the rail, and lift the body so that, oh God! Advancing toward the hammock with uplifted hands, May the resurrection and the life. Brace forward, up helm, cried Ahab like lightning to his men. But the suddenly started Pequod was not quick enough to escape the sound of the splash the corpse made as it struck the sea. Not so quick indeed, but that some of the flying bubbles might have sprinkled her hull with their ghostly baptism. As Ahab glided from that dejected delight, the strange life buoy hanging at the Pequod's stern came into conspicuous relief.
Hi! Yonder! Look yonder, man! Cried a foreboding voice in her wake. In vain, O ye strangers! Ye fly our sad burial, yet you but turn us your taffrail to show us your coffin. And that concludes chapter 131 of Moby Dick, or the Whale by Herman Melville. The Pequod meets the Delight. Welcome to everybody who came in during that. Welcome to the Nope Queen, Annalise, Gusty Gale. Glad to see y'all. Just as a reminder, for anybody enjoying the show, tips are welcome via paypal.me/JoeHills and YouTube Super Chat. Okay, let's see. That was a pretty quick chapter. The next one, though, the symphony, looks a bit longer. So let me see. I think the symphony might be a better fit with the next chapter. Let me skim ahead briefly. And see. I think we're going to save this for the next. Yeah, this is a long enough chapter, and I think it sets up the chapters after that. So 4 chapters remain since Centauratron. Yeah, it feels like we've done 4 chapters already today. And so, yeah, anybody who's watching this in the future via the VOD, feel free to skip to the next one, because we are definitely not going to have time to read the symphony tonight. That will be in the next one. But yeah, welcome, everybody. Are we laying the groundwork for the displays? Yep, this is where the infrared display is going to be. I accidentally put the ultraviolet stuff over here and the infrared stuff over there, which is an inversion of the traditional order of the visible spectrum, and then would have made the entire... So this entire half of the exhibition hall is going to be our electromagnetic spectrum display. And so it's kind of one of those things where I don't want to just have it be wrong, and I don't want to do it backwards. So we're refixing a mistake I made in the last episode. So, yeah. Anybody have any thoughts on that chapter? Seems like that white whale's kind of dangerous. We had Ahab's hat get stolen. And now we've got 5 men dead who tried to chase Moby Dick just a day ago. So Ahab's definitely getting close. Welcome, David Steffen. Glad you could join us. Annalise says, I just came in like 5 minutes ago and I missed an entire chapter. Yeah, it was not a long chapter. But this next one is a lot longer and it sets up the other stuff. So we're going to save that for next week. Okay, getting stuff done, placing the blocks. Dang it. Yeah, I'm glad that I caught this before I started building the exhibits, but I am kind of annoyed that I have to do any rework at all. I would much prefer to be doing fresh building. Okay, so we ended up losing 3 red terracotta, it looks like, which is shockingly good recovery rate for materials on a project like this.
Okay, now that I'm not reading, I could probably place these more efficiently not doing them this way. I was doing them this way because it's easier to do while reading, but we could actually come out to the... I find doing like 3 at a time feels like it's a sweet spot. So if I do stripes every 3 blocks. Simply Lost says, Joe, I wanted to touch on what you said yesterday about the song McDonald's in the Pentagon. My friend has actually been to the Pentagon and has eaten at said McDonald's. Excellent. That's cool. Well, now your friend and you have a song to keep the two of you together. Ersby says, I haven't read Moby Dick yet, but I am reading Fahrenheit 451 right now. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, we read a lot of Ray Bradbury when I was a kid. It was good stuff. I haven't really revisited it as an adult. And I probably should look into like some of his like short story collections and stuff that I might have missed as a kid. So let's grab from the terracotta. Cool, we got some extra red terracotta there in case we need it. And then do we have extra blue terracotta actually as well? That would probably be good to grab if we did. Maybe not. We might have had exactly the right amount. That's fine. You know, we could also consolidate some of this stuff. Maybe, yeah, that's not dye. That doesn't need to go in that box. Yeah, we can shove some of this stuff into, what do you call them? Doom boxes. Da-da-da-da. And get some of the other ones just kind of generically. Yeah. Oh, there is surplus blue terracotta there as well. Yay! That's perfect. Woo. Okay. So, we got a little bit of polished andesite on us. We can go put that away. Centauratron says in the Discord chat, I never read Moby Dick before these streams, and I don't think I would have ever made it this far without them. It's definitely an interesting book. Yeah, I'm glad that you can get something out of this. I'm definitely benefiting from revisiting it, and it's such a time investment, because it's, like, there are certain books that I find I get more out of if I read them aloud. And this is such a long book that it would be hard to justify reading this aloud without an audience. The amount of time it would take is non-trivial. So okay. So let's go ahead and we're gonna place these across here. La da 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 dee, do 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 dee. Bum 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 ba dum bum 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 bum. Gonna place a lot of blocks, okay. Dun, dun. Okay, so then if we're going 1, 2, 3, 4 on this one, we can cut across this way too. Annalise says, I wonder why he won't answer my question. I don't read questions that are, like, broadly off topic. We're talking about a book, and suddenly you're not. So I was going to be polite by not calling you out for rolling in to a book discussion and demanding people talk about something else because, you know, I thought maybe you would get the hint that that was a rude thing to do. But Apparently that is not clear. So now you are wondering aloud why I'm not reading it. You're curious why it's off topic to come in and ask about things that are not the book we're discussing while we're discussing the book. There's a certain level of social awareness that is out of scope for me to educate you on here. That's where we're at. That's it. Okay. So, we have got both of these now repaired and replaced. So it's time to switch back to inventory management stuff. I'm not sure if I want to record another segment. I feel like this is just like, I just throw together a time lapse here. And so we're going to switch over real quick. Welcome, Sophisticated Marble. Glad you could join us. I'm going to switch over here to replay mod and just put in some quick, like, get this roughed in for the time lapse. Evening, Nymph. Doing well, thank you. But yeah, so Centauratron's saying that with only 4 chapters left, it's probably going to be 1 week more of reading. I don't know. I'm scrolling through these remaining chapters, and they are not short. So I'm not going to commit to fitting this all into 1 week. It might be 1, it might be 2. We'll see what the natural flow is. Okay, so let's open this file and get this going. But yeah. Okay, so what we want to do here is we've got both of those markers that indicate the beginning and end of the time lapse. And so we want to frame this in such a way that this is cool looking. And doing that, I think we benefit from like super cranking up the view distance here. Okay, so like if we go options, so let's make the, okay, so we're going to turn night vision on. Then we're going to close the field of view. The problem with closing the field of view is you lose the good horizon. Yeah, because we can see Mumbo's thing barely there. Yeah. Let's see if we set this up like so. How far can we see? We can see out to those trees. Like, yeah. Now, if we pull the field of view back out to normal for a second, and we bring that down to there, we can get kind of a better view off in the distance that way. Okay. Yeah, the broader field of view might be better here. But mixed feelings about this. Okay. So options, video settings. So if we turn that up significantly, because we're not actively playing, we can turn that up a lot. Okay. Because we're not worried about it being jumpy or whatever. So 1150, blah, 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 blah. So we're going to set this to 1150, 1145. Save. Then we're going to let it load in for like 20 seconds because when you go this long in the render distance, it gets weird. So you need to kind of let it warm up. Okay. Okay, so we're going to say this is now 12:0. And then we are going to, so that's 9121 roughly. So 90 minus 11 is 80. So if we did 1 second per minute, which is usually more frames than we need, that would put us at 100 seconds. Honestly, something like this, though, this sort of a time skip, we might only want like 10 seconds. We give it 20 seconds to warm up. And then we're going to jump to, let's do 20 seconds here. So we'll set this to 9110. And then we'll render an additional 10 seconds of 9120. Okay. So at this point, if we hit render, okay, we need second keyframe. I really feel like maybe there's... I mean, it might be hard to beat the shot we had in the first place. Because that's got Joel's city in it, right? And Tango's thing. You know, like, yeah, that's a good shot. So yeah, we're just going to set that up like so. Render camera path, HC5-056. Replay, TL for time lapse. Fixed. Those are all caps. Why did I say HC5? HC10. 055. Replay. Time lapse. Fixed. Spectrum A1. Save. Alrighty. Let's see how that looks. Is this a mall? This is going to be a museum. The real one is kind of a mall now, but it was originally Bell Laboratories Research and Development Campus. If I send you the what we're building link, you'll be able to see that. Okay. Welcome, Marin. Okay. So let's go ahead and we're going to... Oh, I accidentally had the... I had the sky set up wrong. So for one, I did a few things wrong with that render. One, the chroma keying, we actually need to set... We do want the sky chromaed out, but we want it replaced with, like, a fixed blue so the stars don't scrape across it. We don't want it to be green. We're not going to chroma it out with, like, a replacement sky. And then we also need night vision mode on. So we're going to call this one A2 because this is our second pass from the same angle. If I was doing multiple time lapses from the same angle with the same start and stop time, A would be one angle, B would be the second angle, C would be the third angle. Good evening, Kristen on Twitch. Yeah, that building is a 1/4 mile long in real life. When it was constructed, it was the largest mirrored glass building in the world. So we're going to let this load in for a second. Sometimes really big long-distance replays can have some problems if you do multiple renders. So we might have to reopen the client, which I don't want to do if I can avoid it here. Okay, cool, there we go. If it renders the first frame, we're probably okay. I feel like the camera is wobbling. I intended for this to be a fixed set camera. So I'm a little bit worried about what it is. We'll see how it turns out, I guess. That's fine. So yeah, the first 20 seconds is just it giving it time to load in the background. And make sure that everything is all heated up. So I should start moving very quickly anytime now. Still moving very slowly. Maybe I didn't need 20 seconds of warm-up time. I thought with this super long render distance to get Joel's thing in the background, that would be vital. But, like, clearly that's not. I am kind of curious if I could have done this with a better framing, because I didn't realize how much emptiness there was going to be on the other side there. So now we're going to start seeing some action here. Yeah, there's the actual, like, carve out. You're not... You know, I realize, though, the problem with the motion on the camera is then I can't chop out bits where there's stuff that I don't want. Like, if I stand in one place for a while in a time lapse, I usually would just manually cut that out later in Final Cut Pro. But if the camera is moving during the course of the time lapse, you can't do that. So we're going to have to see how smooth this is. Is it worth keeping the bits where nothing happens for a while? Because every time I run down there to pick up blocks, that's not going to be visible here. There is something to be said for doing a slightly different view that has a better shot of the Ravagers in the labyrinth as well. That's an interesting feature. Okay, let me just check on some messages here real quick. Things rolling in. Anything I need to... Okay. So, yeah. I'm not going to worry about that. Just checking some things. Okay. Okay, so this is still going. At this point, I feel like what we've learned, what we are going to from the preview, we could probably turn the preview off. But it is kind of cool to watch it, because this does give us a sense of how this is coming together. And also, if we were going to have the camera follow me during the time lapse, like, I feel like, because I'm jumping between the two zones, though, because I'm not putting the blocks in any temporary buffer storage, it makes sense to just have the camera where you can see both zones at once. And I do like the Ravager hopping around. Enjoy your cross stitch, Indigo. We are working on a replay mod render of the action from our previous recording segment. Okay. I was thinking I might try to do some more inventory management this stream, because there's so much to do. But I'm also tempted to call it an early night and try and get more done early tomorrow. Like, I felt like doing that bonus stream today was very, very helpful for, like, mentally framing where I need to be on this project. Zello was taken, says, are you rendering with distant horizons or something? It seems like crazy distance from what I played around with in replay mod. Yeah, I'm using Bobby mod. Anchor suggests take 2 views and stitch them together side by side to get closer views. Maybe. I mean, honestly, though, like, part of what's interesting visually about the building is that it's just one huge building, right? And so having there be a certain unity to the shot rather than like a split screen, I think helps. I feel like I can't tell if the camera is actually moving or if that's just that might be an optical illusion caused by the stripes on the lower right corner. Like, because that's where when I look at that, I'm like, it feels like the camera's moving a little bit, but I'm looking at everything else. And I'm like, maybe it's not. That might just be a. Zello was taken, says, isn't Bobby better on servers than Department of Homeland? I don't know, maybe. I don't use it. I only use Bobby, so I can't really compare it. Okay, so let's quickly check. Are these different? No, that was just an optical illusion. Okay, cool. So then I'm not going to have a hard time with that. That's great. Okay, cool. So we got that done. We can exit the replay there. We'll have that for the next episode. Yeah. Bum, 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 bum. Once we exit the replay, I do need to turn the view distance back down. Because that is a lot of view distance. Like, so much view distance. Okay, have I done last call for tips? Let's do last call for tips. We're going to wrap up in a few minutes. I need to look at... I was going to say, was there some reason that I wasn't going to do a stream tomorrow? And there actually is. I do have a family commitment that is on my calendar. But yeah. So I'm going to definitely be streaming at the normal time tomorrow night. But I don't know if it would be a challenge to cram in a bonus stream during the day. Not saying it's unlikely... Or not saying it's impossible, but it is unlikely. If I wake up super early and I can't fall back asleep, maybe, but it's unlikely. Okay. Well, I forgot to turn the view distance down. 200 chunks. Too many chunks. Turn it back down to something rational like 79. Okay. So, I'm feeling good about this. Woo. La da 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 da. One thing I also realized is I need to get the tile in these shafts done. But okay, let's put the surplus materials back in the main build storage area. This is the storage area we're working on right now is like the terraforming storage area, whereas the area up here is like the exhibit storage area. Because we're going to be building the exhibits with the stuff in here, which is easily accessed from inside the building, and the stuff over there is easily accessed from outside the building because you zoop fly in through the what do you call it, the driveway thing. Okay, so let me adjust my chair here. Sorry, it is awkward. I kind of moved the mic earlier so I could lean back while I was placing all those blocks, and now I'm regretting it. But yeah, let's go ahead and check out the twitch.tv/following. And Ooh, lots of folks we know are streaming tonight. I think we are in particular going to go ahead, though, and raid the Whopper Chopper tournament hosted by Tom over at Fox Cities Pinball, live from Appleton, Wisconsin. When you get over there, our raid message is howdy y'all. Joe Hill's right here. Oh, hey, they're playing Guardians right now. Okay. Who's playing? Kristen Gregory, Preston Curry, Charlton Plord, and Jason Verdick. Okay, and they are on player 4. Ooh, they still have the good font for the numbers. I hate that in one of the code updates, they put in this, like, hyper-legible font that does not feel Guardians of the Galaxy at all. Like, I liked the original font when this machine first came out. So I wonder if they had to mod it for that, or if they're just not running the new code. I mean, you could do either. But anyway, when we get over there, our raid message is howdy y'all, Joe Hill's right here. They're playing one of my favorite pinball games. I actually had rented a Guardians of the Galaxy from George Don't Panic Flip Fisher for quite a while. And, oh, it looks like they're ending. They might be about to end the game. Either way, that's who we're raiding. When you get over there, our raid message is howdy y'all, Joe Hill's right here. I'm so tired. I'm going to keep saying that. I'm going to say that like 8 times. Okay,